Welcome back to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called No Internet for Them. At my last job, my main duty was the IT manager for the entire location, among other duties. I had been there for 3.5 years at that point, and I was trusted by everyone. If I had something important to say, people listened. During 2020, while other departments' budgets were getting slashed and employees were getting laid off, I was able to replace a lot of our aging IT infrastructure. At the beginning of my last year there, the owner hires a young, I only tell the truth, even though you won't like it, narcissist as a second in charge. He hired this bonehead as his successor to run this location, while the owner would focus on opening up a second. In the first 3 months, Bonehead set off everyone to the point where 15 people from various positions leave the company to find another job. This is during the pandemic, when a lot of people were thankful they had a job. Still, 15 people were like, I am going to risk finding another job in the middle of a pandemic rather than stay here. He was that bad. As Bonehead started to set off our customer base and our sales started to suffer, we switched over to cost-cutting mode. The owner had largely checked out at this point. Long-time vendors were replaced with friends and family of Bonehead. Services were downgraded or cut. Pay plan for the sales department were jacked with, which further eroded the morale of the workforce. One day, Bonehead comes to me and tells me to stop doing safety checks and maintenance repairs on our products, so sales could post larger sales grosses. I loudly objected and went to the owner. But the owner is always happy to hear something about making more money. So he threw his support behind Bonehead's idea. A few months of this go by. On my birthday, he fired one of my employees because he refused to give Bonehead access to the server room. It was restricted to me, the owner, and my employee. At that point, I knew it was time to go. I found a new job and put in my 2 weeks. Of course, Bonehead stops my direct deposit on payday the day after I put in my 2 weeks. I decide it isn't worth working the extra 2 weeks and inform them that I'm out of there, while filing with the state over my wage being withheld. As I'm walking out the door, Bonehead reminds me I am no longer an employee of the company, so I am not to get involved with the company's affairs. And he mentions possible legal repercussions if I say anything negative about the company. Fast forward to this Monday. I get a call from my local internet provider. They tell me my internet service bill has gone unpaid for the last 6 months and will get cut off if I don't pay immediately. I log in and see my account is paid. So after a few back and forths, I find out I'm still the point of contact for my last job's account on their internet service. Remembering what was told to me when I left, I just informed them I cannot get involved as I no longer work there. They asked me for an updated point of contact. If they cannot get one, they will be forced to suspend their service. I repeated that I am not allowed by the threat of legal action to be involved in their affairs and left it with that. An hour later, a buddy I know who still works there called me and told me they had to stop working as the internet service was shut off. I played stupid, but it took 3 days to restore it. The next story is called Clean It. I was busy cleaning the sinks in a restroom when a wild Karen stormed in with her 2 clearly embarrassed children. She pointed to an empty stall. I want that toilet cleaned, now. It was a slow night and I was bored, so I said in my sweetest hospitality voice, Of course, ma'am. Just let me change my gloves. I changed my gloves, making a show of checking for holes in the material before pushing my cart to the stall. I grabbed the chemical with the longest dwell time, 3 minutes, which is forever in guest time, and spray down the toilet. I put the chemical back on the cart and wiped down the toilet. I was in the process of changing out my gloves when Wild Karen tried to push me aside. I'm a big woman of mostly muscle, so it's like trying to push over a brick wall. Oh no, ma'am, I'm not done yet. I have to disinfect the toilet. Want it super clean for you. How long will that take? Wild Karen asked, impatient. My youngest really has to go. Oh, about 3 minutes, I say, setting the timer on my work phone and holding it up to her to show it. But if you want, you are more than welcome to use any of the other stores I've cleaned, which is all of them. This is ridiculous, she huffed, dragging her kids to another stall. The kids shot me an apologetic look as she shoved them in, went in herself and closed the stall door. I turned up the volume on my work phone so she'd hear the timer go off, as I guessed she'd be finished long after the toilet was disinfected. And I was right. I had finished wiping down the toilet when wild Karen and her 2 kids came out. "I'm going to complain to your manager about how long you took," she hollered as she stormed out. "Have a good night then," I shouted after her. Later that night, I was turning in my equipment when my manager came up, struggling not to laugh. "I understand you took too long to clean a toilet," she said before bursting into laughter. I laughed right back and said, "Well, she asked me to clean it." The third story is called For a Big Table. This happened a long time ago. When I was in my late teens, I worked at the local franchise of a popular steakhouse/buffet as a cashier and hostess. On our busier days, table turnover could be insane. So for me to help clean a table to seat was a normal thing, as the servers bussed their own tables. We, of course, would see tables that were already clean, but sometimes customers would prefer a different location that wasn't. Since it was a buffet, this wasn't a huge problem. We would clean while they filled plates. On one very memorable occasion, this happened to me with a bit of a twist. I took a party to a clean table in Blondie's section. I don't know how old she was, but I would wager late 20s, and she had been there longer than I had. When we got there, the head of the party said they would prefer a different table, still in Blondie's section, and indicated one that had not been cleaned yet. I flashed my best customer service smile and said it would not be a problem. They started to turn away, and I prepared to clean the table for them. All of a sudden, Blondie rushed up to me and said that the table was unavailable and asked if another table would be okay instead. I explained the situation and that they had chosen the table specifically, but she was adamant. She explained that she wanted that table and another available to merge for large parties. Tips are almost always better with a large group. I apologized profusely to the current party I was seating and asked if the new table would suffice. They assured me it was alright and took everything in stride as they made their way to the food. The next time Blondie went into the dish area in the kitchen, less than 10 minutes later, I followed her in and proceeded to tear her a new one. It felt really weird to be so thoroughly dressing down anyone older than me. I was raised with old school morals and ideas of respect for those older than me. But she had embarrassed me, and I told her so, and that what she had done made it look like I didn't know how to do my job. She apologized, but held her stance. I was still fuming, so I did what anyone with a teenage brain would do. I went to Mom, or rather the head server and her supervisor, not my actual mom. I told Mom what she had done and why, and she told me that was fine. If she wants larger tables, she can have them. For the next at least 15 to 20 minutes, every large group that came in was seated in her section. Remember, busy day, so this was frequent. She eventually came up to the hostess station to ask me to stop. I told her to talk to Mom. The last story is called No Spices. I am currently working as a server in a restaurant, and despite my best efforts, there are some customers who simply refuse to be polite. We had a customer who was incredibly rude, typical Karen type, asking for all sorts of modifications to their order. They specifically requested butter chicken with absolutely no spices. Now, as a server, I understand that everyone has different tastes and preferences. However, this customer was rude and condescending for no reason. So I relayed the customer's request to the chef, making sure to emphasize the lack of spices. I could feel a small twinge of satisfaction as I pictured the disappointment on the customer's face when they received their bland dish. After all, they had complained about not having any spice. Well, if they wanted flavorless, they were going to get flavorless. Here's the kicker. I made sure to tell the chef not to season it at all. The chicken had been cooking in a pan just with some butter. Later, when I brought out the dish, Karen attempted to eat it with no seasoning. You could tell she was struggling with every bite without making any comments. Meanwhile, everyone else she was with was absolutely raving about the chicken. But because she backed herself in the corner, saying she couldn't have any spice at all, she couldn't try any. She sat there, desperately trying to salvage her meal with butter and salt. The expression on her face was priceless when I brought her the bill. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, Please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.